And hello everyone, I am here to talk about Deathsmiles, and this is a 1cc run I have with Casper. That includes highest rank throughout the game, as well as the Ravine extra stage, and yeah, that results in maximum level suicide bullets. Now initially, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure I was going to do a commentary on this at all, and full disclaimer, I'm not sure this is really going to be a commentary, at least for the first half or so of the video, because I think I'm going to end up just, while they're playing, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the game and kind of my overall thoughts in some, you know, kind of why I played it, why Deathsmiles, why now, and you know, kind of some things I got from it. So first of all, I guess I'll just start by saying I really did have fun with this game, and I think it really helped teach me some, you know, important lessons that I'll be able to kind of take into other games of the genre. And I think one specific thing that it does is gives you a lot of flexibility, and so it's really good at goal setting. I mentioned that kind of in my comments to the earlier videos I posted, which were kind of the incremental steps along my way to ultimately try to work up to this. And I'll also be honest, I didn't even really plan to go as far as I did in my goal setting. I was originally going to do just rank 3 with Hades Castle, and then I was like, you know what, I'm having fun, I'm going to go for the Ravine, and really glad I did, and I will admit it really did kind of push me, you know, particularly that level 3 Hades Castle with the level 3 suicide bullets, really pushed me. So about me and my approach, I tend to play for survival, not score. Despite that, though, I do tend to, when I pick up a new game, try to engage in the scoring mechanics early on. And even though I don't play for score, there's a couple reasons I do that. First of all, it helps with survival because, at least in cave games, there's usually a couple score-based extends. And so you want to engage in the scoring system enough so that you're earning both of those score-based extends in your run. Because if you're not, that's actually a huge detriment to survival, because you don't get that last extend, which is usually 3 or so bombs, again, unless you're you know, taking some bad deaths and losing some bombs. So from a resource perspective, it really is, you know, a big detriment to not play score, at least enough to get those extends. And the second reason I really kind of engage in the scoring mechanics is, you know, I'll say as I've gotten older and kind of you know, sort of become thinking about my approach to just gaming in general, I realized a lot of times you should really just lean into what the developers of a game are going for and trying to get you to do, because you're engaging the experience that they really artistically designed for. So I've kind of come to this thought that you really should engage in what the developer is trying to do to give that game a fair shot, because, you know, if it's a good game, you know, and the developers are onto something, you're actually going to get more fun out of it because you're really kind of engaging in what the game is trying to get you to do. Okay, so already one stage done, and I've just babbled. I'll circle back to kind of my stage order selection in a minute, but I do want to hit a little bit on the cleverly designed aspect of the game. So you'll see, I'm going to jump around. So you'll see here, this is the first time, you'll notice in the first stage, even though I said I was engaging in the scoring mechanics, I intentionally didn't power up in the first stage. And the reason I didn't do that is, you know, to not have to rely on tricks and to make sure I had full power up, or I could activate power up, full counter at the beginning of the stage, because graveyard, cemetery, whatever, definitely a stage you want to, you know, use for score. Because of the way it's laid out, and you can get a lot of score. Because what I'm doing here is I'm kind of getting to the house right around the time my counter is running out, and so I'm trying to recharge. One thing that took me a long time to figure out, even though I watched other videos, there was just something about doing it to kind of fully understand. As tight as the timing is, as soon as you activate like a big, like the house exploding, you know, something that gives you a lot of items, you can hit the lock-on button, or, you know, both A and B, left and right shot for the lock-on, if you hit that, it's going to double the rate that it burns through your remaining counter. So when you have all of those items on the screen and you're close, but maybe you triggered it a little earlier than you would have wanted to, hit those, hit the lock-on shot, and it is going to burn that counter down and kind of get you to a place where you can collect those items to restore your counter, as opposed to, score in the waning moments of your power-up. Okay, so wrapping up the second boss here, let me go back to some of my thoughts on the game. This game really does provide a lot of flexibility in terms of your choices that you make to really kind of make it accessible across a wide range of goals. Like, you can start with a goal being survival, go all rank 1 stages, and it is a very different game from what it becomes later on with Suicide Bullets. Extremely different game. And so I'll even admit, back when I played this game in the early 2000s, one of the things that kind of was daunting to me, and it wasn't until now, 2024, that I finally actually played the game, like, in earnest. Part of the reason for that was there was just so much choice that I was kind of like crippled by the choice, so to speak. I didn't know what to do, and at the time I wasn't very well versed in the genre. I just knew I had really had an affinity towards other cave games, Espeluna definitely being one of those. When I posted my runs for that game last year or so. So, I really had an affinity for cave. I had picked up the game, but I really had no direction. I didn't really know what to do, so to speak. And so, I ended up putting this game down for a long, long time. And so while I, in retrospect, really see that flexibility that gives you as a benefit of the game, it certainly was a barrier of entry, at least for me, in terms of, really being able to dive into the game, because without anything to help guide me into what choices I make given all that flexibility, I just struggled. So you'll see here, as I'm losing out on opportunity to comment on the run, you'll see here, I did run out of power-up earlier than I wanted to. Normally, if you can keep it going until the islands appear behind you, killing those islands when you're in fever mode with lock shot, they give you a ton of items, and it's enough to completely recharge your counter. But it expired too early there, but still okay, because kind of the backup of what I'm going for is, you'll see after this I go to the volcano stage, because I don't want to be in hell mode for volcano stage, which I'll explain why when we get there. So my big objective is I want to have full counter by after the boss, and so I'm definitely on track to do that here. Unless of course I get a miss. I'm at 995 now, and I will definitely be able to have a full counter going into volcano. Now here, there's the safe spot, and I'm sure if you've researched into the game and looked at other replays, there's a safe spot here. For some reason, when I pivoted over to Casper, I had a really hard time finding it. And the mistake I was making was going too far back. I was going back near the life bars, but if you kind of hit it right in the middle of the screen near the third bomb icon, in that rough area, it's always going to be good. But for whatever reason, I kept trying to do it further back and was having issues. So, that was something that took me a little bit to learn. So you see here a volcano stage. Now I'm entering it with full counter. Again, activate, as I say again, probably like you've seen in other replays, assuming you've looked into that. Activate the power-up early on and start to really leverage those these rock spouts, or whatever you want to call them, to give you a ton of points. Now, depending on how you time this, you can actually spend the bomb and recharge your counter as you approach the big rock that's coming up. That's a very common recharge point for people. In this run, I do not do it. For whatever reason, I had a better time of it with Rosa than I did with Casper. I would get to this part, I'd activate the bomb, and then I would come out of it with like 400 or 500 counter. I'd screw it up. And now I'm trying to navigate this section not in power-up mode. So because I had already gotten the second score extend, now my interest in the scoring is essentially more or less done, aside from just habits I developed for how to score. And so, you know, I kind of switch into something that's a little better for survival, which is staying in power up for the entire duration while you're going around that rock. And again, I forget if I end up being able to have a fully charged counter by the end of the stage. But, you know, if you're not going for crazy score and kind of going more for survival like I was, you know, it's nice to just go into the next stage having full power up, and then you can, at least for me, I found I kind of practiced some scoring routes for each stage. Not high scoring, but just like, you know, proficient scoring. I would always practice them in training mode, kind of starting with a full counter. So in general, if I could leave with a full counter, that's what I wanted to do. Now, I mentioned before I didn't want to be in death mode for the volcano stage. It was precisely because of that portion there where here on the second stage, when you go in the second round of stages, those bullets that come up from the volcano, they don't spill over on the side. In death mode, they start to spill over on the side, and I have never found a good route through those. And even my stage selection order in this run definitely focused more on survival than it is score. Because I already have all the extends, you know, well before even the extra stage. You know, when you're doing a run like this that's going to go through the ravine, there's really no concerns you have in terms of getting both score-based extends. Now you'll see here with Casper, I was able to, you know, if you do the high DPS right, this boss, it's particularly noticeable. I didn't even have to deal with that one pattern where the rocks are kind of accordioning in from top and bottom, because I was able to, you know, clear that first form so quickly. The way you do that with Casper, you know, for those who don't know or haven't looked it up, it really kind of is a little bit of a rhythm. When you tap her shot, those kind of buzzsaw boomerangs shoot out, and I think there's about 4 of them you can have on the screen at any time. That combined with her laser does much more damage at point blank. So if you kind of hit this rhythm where you tap a couple times to shoot out those buzzsaws, and then point blank with the laser, hold it for a second or second and a half, maybe 2 seconds, and then go back to shooting out the buzzsaws, and you kind of get that rhythm, you get a nice high DPS with her, but you kind of have to build in that muscle memory of an effective rhythm, you know, where you're tapping a couple, then holding, tapping a couple, holding, and point blanking with the laser. But if you practice it, it does really pay dividends on some bosses, like that one that I just showed you, where you don't have to worry about some of the harder patterns if you can kill the boss really quickly. So this route, you'll notice, so now I'm in death mode, or hell mode, I forget, I think it's death mode, I think I called it that earlier, I apologize if I called it hell mode. Regardless, you know, the route I picked through the stages, or the order that I chose the stages, I guess I don't want to use the term route, so I distinguish it from my routes through the stages, you know, but I picked Halloween Town last, primarily because you get the 2 life items. Now it turns out in this run I had done well enough that I didn't actually take a hit, or enough hits that I needed both of these life items by this stage, but nonetheless, you know, I kind of designed the route around that because it's just, in general, more effective for survival, because it has the 2 half extent, you know, the 2 half life items in this stage, this here on the screen being the second one. So, you know, now we're in death mode, and again, this is kind of like my 1 power up per stage. I'm not focusing too heavily on making sure I get, you know, recharges and maximizing scoring. Yeah, I think this run ends up at like 180 million? 180 billion or 18 billion. I forget how many zeros. I think it's 180 million. Regardless, it's below the you know, the second score-based achievement that the achievements have, you know, for those familiar with the trophies or achievements of the game. I don't think I said it. I did play this version on the Xbox 360. I did kind of relate the story up front that, you know, for a long time, even though I had purchased this game way back when it first was localized, I didn't play it for many, many years. Part of the reason for that, like I said, was the flexibility. The only reason I really went back to it, strangely enough, is I had picked up relatively recently a 32-inch CRT, and I wanted to, you know, for input lag purposes and others, and I wanted to play a shoot 'em up, shmup on there. And I ultimately went with Deathsmiles because it was a 4:3, it's the horizontal aspect ratio, so I was able to use the CRT and get full screen, because I didn't do the whole Tate thing. And although I later tried it with the smaller TV, the 32 inches, just a beast. Those things are so heavy, because they become non-linear with weight as they get bigger, just because they need all the thickness of the glass to hold in the vacuum. Anyway, so I'm really only playing this game because A, I had it, I could play it on a TV that only accepts composite video, and then was a full screen. I did end up trying Tate with a smaller CRT, and totally got thrown off by the whole Earth's magnetic field degaussing issue, for anyone who's familiar with that. But nonetheless, I'm derailing onto just Tate and other stuff. So, a couple things I wanted to say up front, and I just didn't get through it before. There was some things about the run I wanted to say. I don't know that I have a ton to say about this particular stage. Again, I'm just doing kind of like my one power-up per stage. I've already got all the score-based extends. Really focusing more on survival here. The options. I was not a big fan of, like I said, the flexibility in this game was daunting to me at first, and even though I ended up really liking that about the game for goal setting. The other thing that kind of was an impediment to me playing this game is the art style. I'm definitely not into what they were going for. And I'll almost phrase it as I played the game in spite of, what they were going for thematically and artistically. But, at the end of the day, good mechanics, fun game. You can just tune that stuff out. I also guess, will say, having played this game, for as long as I did, and kind of with the multiple interim goals, and ultimately trying to do a level 3 castle run, which this is, I do feel like I learned a lot from this game that I think will help me in other shoot 'em ups. The first thing is, I didn't learn this until later, but one thing I'm taking away from this game that it's already kind of, I don't want to say paid off, in the next game, which I'm playing, but one thing I would recommend doing is try all the shot types early on, because they're all doing something different, and you never really exactly know which one you're gonna, resonate with and like. And I actually I'm glad Casper was the character or shot type I went through, but I did not pick her for gameplay reasons necessarily, and I kind of lucked into the fact that she was a good fit for my style. So I guess the one thought I'll throw out there for that Sakura boss fight I just had is in that final form, that exists in rank 3. Again, if you're using Casper high DPS, you can do the high DPS before that last form, and she's more or less guaranteed to be taken care of before anything there is really a threat. So now here's the gorge. So I'll start talking about a couple things. One thing that I really struggled with in this first sequence of this stage was, and you saw it a little bit there, some of the suicide bullets would like spawn above or below me, and they'd come in at a real steep angle. I would have a heck of a time trying to consistently manipulate the suicide bullets in a way where I didn't get kind of trapped by that. What I found with Casper is, because her shot throws those boomerangs that I was talking about earlier, they have a pretty wide arc to them. So when you have kind of rows of enemies, that are going to create suicide bullets, and you kind of like are trying to tap dodge along, with Casper, it helped me immensely to get into the habit of ensuring that I was killing them with a laser and not with boomerang. Because if I was throwing boomerangs and they were looping around me, there's a much higher likelihood that it was going to clip one of those popcorn enemies that were then going to shoot a suicide bullet at me at this steep angle that I would struggle with. So there's my first miss of the run. I will say, watching this, there's something about actual runs where this first kind of segment of the ravine where you're going up, I have had much cleaner runs, but whenever I get to it in like an actual run, I don't know if it's nerves or what, I tend to kind of get off route a little bit and struggle. But I always try to ride a power up all the way up, so I'm more likely to take a hit because I'm less likely to bomb I kind of am very hesitant to bomb when I'm in power-up mode because it basically ends power-up mode. It saps it up so quickly. So the mid-boss there, definitely early on I learned that, you know, if you just hug close to the ground, you know, the physical hitbox of that enemy is not, or of the boss is not on the ground, so you can just kind of ride the ground. Here, definitely a little messier than I would have hoped, but again, I powered up, didn't want to bomb, you know, so I was able to kind of work my way through everything. And so at this point, I still kind of have full bombs, and I didn't say it yet, but one of the things I really, you know, I think from a play style worked well with me and Casper is, you know, especially when you're in power-ups and you're so incredibly fast that you can macro dodge around a lot of things that I find helpful in sequences like you just saw. Now I did end up using my bomb there even though I was in power-up mode, because that is a portion where I always struggle in that segment to no bomb it. Here's another one. At this point I'm trying to play more conservatively, and so I've burned through 2 of the bombs already. You know, but it was a good enough run heading up to it, and yeah, I'll say when nerves hitting, sometimes you gotta stick with the bombs. And this stage here is definitely, I've had tons of run killers where, you know, I'm doing practice, I'm like no missing the stage up until the boss, and then I get into like the actual run and I've like burned through 3 lives by this point of the stage. So I did struggle with consistency in Ravine enough that, you know, I started being a little more liberal with my bombs. Now you'll notice here, my familiar was, I wanted it to be straight in front of me and it was actually a little below, so as I creeped forward I had to like keep moving down to make sure I was following behind the you know, the path that the familiar was funneling for me in the suicide bullets. And I'll say, in general, that was one of those, you know, skills that kind of led me to the Casper Rosa familiar shot type in terms of how to control it, as opposed to the Windia Follette, because now here, I knew when I watched the replay, I've watched it a couple of times now there, I had just gotten the power up, and I was like, why did I not power up there? So I just hit 1,000, I could have powered up and canceled all those bullets. Instead, I freeze, I take the hit, and now I'm going into the boss without power up, so it's not like I, you know, by taking that hit, it ended up being a loss no matter what. Although I will say, this was actually a very good run through the boss. So kind of the route I developed is hold out as long as you can to bomb, you know, which I did there, and then again using the Casper high DPS tricks, really kind of stay to the right and get in the face, and then here wait as long as you can to bomb, and you'll notice I was able to go long enough and wait long enough that that second bomb actually killed it, so took care of the boss, no miss, 2 bombs. That's good for me for this boss. Yeah, I'm always using at least 2, usually 3 bombs, and a lot of times I'm taking a hit. So even though I took that poor hit leading up to it where I could have powered up, turns out, I'll say no harm, no foul. That's kind of one of those just run-to-run variability things. So now here's Hades Castle with these level 3 suicide bullets, and man oh man did I struggle with this stage. Again, I think probably the biggest thing for me, you know, that ultimately helped me get there, was this idea of when you have your familiar out in front of you, make sure you're using laser as you kind of tap dodge. Which unfortunately with the Casper shot type from a controls perspective is a little difficult because you gotta not tap the button, and therefore anytime you move it's gonna move the familiar, so familiar positioning ends up being kind of important. Nonetheless, you know, I got to a place here where again you're pretty liberal with the bomb. I just use the bomb because a lot of times only level 3 castle. Level 2 castle, I'm good. But level 3 castle, those suicide bullets just come at you so aggressive that I use the bomb. Now there, I totally was able to, I'll just call it luck. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Sweep up and around that wave of wall of suicide bullets. And then I ended up taking a hit shortly thereafter. So now I'm off route, because usually by this point I like to have activated power up in that segment. Instead of using a bomb like I did, activate power-up. Because I had just taken a hit, I didn't have the power-up, had to use the bomb. So now I'm activating power-up later than I usually do. This segment here is another one that, you know, sometimes I get through it pretty good, and other times I'll take a hit from one of those sharp angled suicide bullets. And you know, this was one of the good ones, but again, from a consistency standpoint, I struggle through that section there just because the quantity of the suicide bullets is rough. Now, in this portion here, this was one of the things that kind of taught me a little bit of discipline. You know, in that segment with the dragons, don't always be firing. Like, pause your fire, like let some of the dragons linger on the screen, and then take a couple of them out, kind of in a line. That helps with the suicide bullets. Then you'll see with the giant cow, because I had power up, I just point blank it, high DPS it before the power up runs out. That has been a consistently winning strategy for me with Casper in that particular, I'll call it a mid-boss. Yeah. So here now, you know, because I took that hit up above, I'm down to 2 hits left. And I'm already down a bomb. So this is where, you know, ideally I want to be a little higher. Just use the bomb there. Retrospect, very glad I used that bomb. Sometimes you look at it afterwards and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that one. I was happy about that one. I learned over time here, get down low, get those statues with the laser while you're straight on, and absorb the suicide bullets. A lot of times I was making the mistake with those statues of blowing them up and then immediately moving up, and then those suicide bullets would come at me. So I took the hit there. Again, I was in power-up mode. I don't like the bomb in power-up mode, and I knew at this point I know I'm behind where I want to be on resources, so I had to be stingy, and I ended up paying for it, took the hit. And then right afterwards I ended up using another bomb. So now I'm down to, and you'll see I took a half-life hit too. So I'm still in the basement. I only have 2 bombs left and half a life. I'm like, oh, this run's over. But as I've learned, and I have a whole set of Mushihime-sama videos that I might post from a year ago. I recorded them, I never posted them. I might throw them up there eventually. There's just enough variability from run to run. Just stick with it. You never know what's going to happen. There was a run, I'm going to post it, I call it the Heartbreak Run, where I got to Tyranno Satan final form. He had a sliver of life left, and I ran out of resources and got killed with literally a half-second worth of damage for the boss. I learned from that run, as much as I'm not consistent, I'll call it superhero this last portion of the castle. Every once in a while, I'm just able to do it. And it turns out this run was one of them again. I'm in the basement, half bar of life, 2 bombs. I'm like, there's no way. But I just kind of stuck with it, started getting aggressive. Right here, really dicey. That was not dodge, that was luck. Sometimes I've learned that if you think you're stuck, don't panic and move. Just sit there, you're a sitting duck, but the hitbox is small, it might miss you, and that's exactly what happened there. So now I'm in the ballroom, still just the 1 bomb, still just the half. Still in my head, it's kind of low likelihood. There's something about once you've mentally given up on a run a little bit, that allows you to maybe be a little more aggressive and a little more loose. I think that's definitely what happened here. Like, I knew I didn't have bombs, I knew I just had to go for it and put it all out there, see what happens. Now, on that wolf there, like, you see how aggressive I was. As soon as I kill it off, just rush forward to get through the suicide bullets. Again, there, line it up, and shoot forward, tunnel my way through all those suicide bullets. So here's where I'm like there, that was, easily could have gotten clipped there. I'm just, at this point, I'm just rolling with it to see what happens. Got a little nervous there, because now I got a power up, and I'm like, holy crap, I might actually pull this off. So I activate the power up there to get the cancel. Now, that was not ideal, because I like to go into Jitterbug with full power up and activate power up. Now, instead, I burn the power up, and while it gets me to Jitterbug, here I am at like 400 counter by the time the fight starts, basically saying, I don't know, because I like to have the power up because you kill them a little quicker if you have that. Nonetheless, you know, here I am at Jitterbug, and of course, you know, if you no miss, no bomb, which is my only option here, you get the 2 lives. And, you know, I kind of developed a path with Tyranno Satan where if I get to him and I get the 2 life extend, you know, on the resources that you get from just that 2 life extend, I have a route that generally consistently gets me through. So, you know, I don't want to say it all rests on this Jitterbug fight, but you know, certainly, you know, again, all my margin for error was gone in the basement. So the approach I take for this fight, lock on early on. So just spend a little bit of time in his face and then lock on and back up. Took me a while to realize it. With Jitterbug, if you are forward of like half of the screen, he has this wave that he shoots at you that is extremely fast and difficult to dodge. With Casper, you can kind of macro around it a little bit, but because of that, I developed the route for Jitterbug here, where get in his face, but then very lock on and very quickly back up. Now, once I got to that point, I was pretty pumped, because I was like, while I have screwed up this part here, I have found that if you cut the heart perfectly in half with the bomb icon, this fixed pattern, you'll always be in the right spot. Now, obviously, if you don't have a bomb icon, you can't use it, but because I have the 1 bomb left, I'm able to use that visual cue and make sure I get in the right spot. I have not done this pattern enough to be reliable enough that if I'm slightly off alignment before it, you know, the bullets spawn, that I can do a quick adjustment and get there. I can do it sometimes, but not reliably. So having that bomb icon there to really line it up, now I'm like, okay, this could happen. It's kind of what's going through my mind at this point. Particularly because I have a bomb. I still have a bomb, so it gives me a little bit of margin on my Tyranno Satan route. Now, I call it a route. There still is some inconsistency. It really depends if I get clipped here on this first attack or not. Having a bomb gives me the ability to use it, and obviously I was nervous. I burn it right away. So it's like, well, there goes that margin of having that bomb. But still, it got me to the second set of waves here, so now I can give this a shot. Now, this pattern, I figured out how to manipulate it. It took me a long time. So even though I didn't have the bomb, I don't always navigate it like I did there, but I at least have a shot. And so here, you know, totally picked this trick up from watching other replays. No bombs, so I have to be a little more conservative. This here, you know, I end up getting hit by the box itself. Doesn't matter if it's a box or bullet, because I only had half life, but you know, so now I'm pretty much on my route, so to speak. So I'm feeling good, feeling like I can, you know, potentially get this to work. Sometimes this pattern here gives me struggles there. I do not like to use 2 bombs, so now I feel like I'm behind a little bit. But, you know, again, Casper's DPS, I learned when I throw a bomb with her, use her speed, get right up, and just point blank, even for just a little bit, getting in that habit, really, really helpful. Here, I didn't need to bomb. You know, in retrospect, I was lined up perfectly. So I end up bombing, and now I'm on this pattern, and I rarely get through that pattern, no bombing. Ended up taking the hit early. Once you take the hit again, a little bit of invulnerability, point blank, DPS. Do what you can to whittle away the life. So, death mode, that pattern there, I have to bomb. I've never done and survived that one without bombing. Here, I only have 2 bombs left. And his life is pretty low. That was very, very close. That was a reaction bomb. I probably could have... I probably could have saved the bomb. Or I probably could have used the bomb more proactively. I was trying to save it because in the Heartbreak run, as I call it, which again, I'll post that, you know, that was basically where I got to, and I had run out of bombs. So I was really trying to save the bombs. But in that particular run, or in what I just showed, I was not looking at the life bar. Like, I was just so focused on everything in the immediate vicinity of my hitbox that I was not looking at the life at all. So I didn't know how much margin I did or didn't have. So certainly if I knew how much damage he had, I would have thrown that bomb much earlier and avoid that near miss. But like I had said from the run, like even when I was down in the basement, I had kind of seen this as a low of the castle, had seen this as a low probability run. So it worked out. I was really psyched because the heartbreak run, as I call it, I got so close. That was probably a week and a half or even 2 weeks before I was able to complete it, because my life, I have a very busy life right now. 4 kids, don't have a lot of time to kind of grind away sessions where I'm practicing and improving here. So nonetheless, I was really, really pleased. So let me go back to kind of some of the overall thoughts of the game and my final thoughts of some things I learned from the game. So with Casper, definitely the way that you get high DPS with her, with the point blank, but then leverage her speed back up. So point blank, back up, point blank, back up. That kind of aggressive flow, like I feel like that's kind of a little bit of a general strategy for how to be aggressive in these types of games. I really think that's going to serve me well when I try going back to a game like Ketsui. So Ketsui, I have not 1cc'd yet, even on the first loop, and so I feel like that type of skill set definitely going to help me there. So I was, really, I'll say pleased that I was able to pick up that kind of, what that feels like and kind of the benefit that can provide you. Because definitely, if you go back and look at my Aspergaluda runs, with Ageha in particular, I'm like on the bottom quarter of the screen almost the whole run. Like very, very infrequently was I aggressive and did I get up higher on the screen. Here with Deathsmiles, I really learned with Casper that can really pay dividends. So let's see, what else do I have for final thoughts on the game? I had mentioned before how I didn't want to play it, and the CRT was the reason I played it. Back when I first got the game, I also did not really appreciate the music or Namiki in general as a composer. Now looking back on it, I really enjoy his stuff. I really enjoy his music, across a lot of cave games and other games. Actually, it's funny, I like his cave stuff a lot better than I like his Garega stuff. Not quite sure why, but I remember, I've been into listening to video game music for a long time, even like outside of the games. And whenever I would hear like people excited about Namiki, I just never understood it. But now that I've gone back and I'm playing these games, I get it now. So anyway, I think I've hit my checklist of all the things I wanted to talk about just in time for the score here. So ended up at 184 million and get the game over, got the clear. This was kind of the goal I was going for.